Thank you for viewing Module 3 of our Policy Surveillance Training video series. In this video, you will learn about question development. By the end of this video, you should be able to understand the goals of question development and understand how to draft coding questions. Question development has two primary goals. The first goal is to track laws through question and answer format. Even with large, complex areas of law, the question and answer format is easily accessible to non-lawyer audiences, including policymakers, researchers, the media, and the public. A question and answer format also converts law into data, which can be used for evaluation. In addition, asking the right questions and structuring your questions in certain ways has a powerful impact on what information is yielded from those questions. Finally, the format lends itself to easily updating and maintaining the study. The second goal of question development is to create questions that call for observation rather than interpretation. Questions should measure the law rather than interpret it. This allows researchers to code the study more consistently and efficiently. The structure and wording of questions are essential for yielding questions that call for observation.
These are the steps you follow when drafting coding questions. It is important to note that question development is an iterative process. The question and response sets will evolve as the researchers code the questions. The following slides will detail these 5 steps.
The first step in drafting questions is revisiting the research you did during Module 2. Reviewing your 5-state memorandum, your sample of laws, and secondary sources will provide you with the context needed to draft questions. The second step in drafting questions is finalizing your list of constructs. Legal constructs are the features of the law that can vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Examples of constructs include penalties, prohibitions, age restrictions, or possession limits. During your background research and scoping phase in Module 2, you should have developed a preliminary list of constructs. Through secondary sources that you have revisited in Step 1, you can start to finalize the legal constructs that you would like to measure. These finalized constructs should be converted into your first draft of questions. Policy surveillance collects 2 kinds of constructs in each study: standard constructs and legal constructs. Standard constructs are included in every study and provide information which is helpful for quality control and analysis of the data. This slide showcases a few standard constructs that you may want to include in your study as identifying information. The jurisdiction is the locality, county, state, or country which is being studied in that particular iteration of the law. The effective date is the date at which the most recent law in each iteration of your built law took effect. The FIPS code is the Federal Information Processing Standard, a unique identifier for every jurisdiction in the United States. Finally, the coder name is the name of the researcher who coded a particular record. Responses are the potential answers to the questions you are developing. During our research for our 5-state memorandum, see Module 2, we identified that the law generally prohibits drivers from 4 primary distracted driving behaviors: texting, calling, hands-free texting, or hands-free calling. We consider prohibited behaviors to be the construct. The behaviors themselves, such as texting and calling, are what we call responses. We know from our 5-state memorandum that not all states will include all responses in their law, but the goal is to create a list that encompasses all possible options. If you find new responses later in your process as you begin coding additional states, you can revisit this stage of the policy surveillance process and add answer choices. Once you have identified your constructs and identified their attributes, you can begin to construct full coding questions. For some questions, the content will follow fairly easily from the structure of the constructs and the responses. One way to structure questions is to develop questions with multiple layers. A parent question is the highest level question, with child questions being 1 level below and grandchild questions being 1 level below child questions. A parent question can be broad, asking whether law exists on a certain topic, for example, and with each layer of questions, more detail is yielded from the law. In the example on the slide, we convert 2 constructs related to our distracted driving datasets into questions. The first construct, type of driver, could be converted into a question that asks what types of drivers are restricted from using cell phones while driving, with different types of drivers as answer choices. However, for this project, we decided to lead with a parent question on whether cell phone use is restricted for each type of driver individually, and then asking child questions as applicable to that kind of driver. This allows the project to provide more specific information on what kinds of restrictions apply to what kinds of drivers. The way that you formulate and organize questions has a big impact on what kind of information the project can provide. While you are converting constructs into questions, be sure you are writing questions that will capture observations in the law as opposed to interpretation. As discussed in Module 2, defining the scope and background research, policy surveillance focuses on features of the law that you can actually observe, not a person's interpretation of what the law does. Observations are things we measure, while interpretations are the conclusions we derive from those observations. If you are creating a scientific legal project, or any measurement product that will be used for evaluation, all of your questions must be carefully constructed to only ask for observations. For example, a question that asks, "Is texting while driving illegal in this state?" is a question that calls for observation, because the answer does not vary depending on interpretation. On the other hand, a question that asks, "Does this state have a strict texting while driving ban?" calls for interpretation because the answer could vary depending on what the researcher thinks. Once you have converted your constructs to questions and identified the responses, you may begin to find new responses as you are coding the law. Coding consists of answering the questions you have come up with using the law that you have collected. To learn more about coding, please visit Module 5 in our learning library. As researchers code relevant jurisdictions, they may find constructs or attributes within a construct that they have not seen during the original 5-state memorandum process. Upon discovering a new response in a jurisdiction, the researchers should amend their list of attributes to include the choice of other. When a researcher sees a new answer choice that they think is relevant, they can select other and add a note to the question explaining what answer choice they found and citing where it is in the law. This way, the supervisor of the project can review the note and potentially add an answer choice to the study. Once a response has been officially added, the researcher will recode that specific question in that jurisdiction, removing other and the note from their coding form. Here you will find a summary of what we have covered on question development. To learn more about conducting policy surveillance, please visit the Learning Library at lawatlas.org to access additional modules and resources, including Module 4, Collecting the Law. Thank you for watching.